becomes part of creation, there is an assumption of everything that is human. Everything. Every nook and cranny has to be taken in. And so when he assumes humanity to redeem it, he has to assume even suffering and death, because that's part of our fallen humanity. In the Transfiguration, our Lord answers their concerns. He basically says, this is what happens to someone who becomes all they are intended to be by God. And in the power of grace, reveals a taste of the resurrection for them to hold on to when they go through the horror of his paschal transition and mystery. This is what happens. This is what humanity really is. This is what it means. You see, he doesn't really evidence, in a sense, does he, the divine? He evidences a glorified humanness. This is the powerful, luminescent radiance reflecting the Father's Shekinah, reflecting the Father's very presence so perfectly. When human beings become truly human, when they are everything the Father intends them to be, they are transfigured like this. And it is the fulfillment of every law. It is the fulfillment of every prophecy. It is the essence of the covenant. You know, someone asked me before, why do we have that first reading on this Transfiguration Day of Abram going into that cloud? Well, that's the reason. The cloud into which Abram goes, which is so bright it is as of darkness. So bright, the luminescent presence of God. He enters that presence so that the covenant can happen. So do these disciples. The cloud of God's presence overshadows them all so they can understand. That's what we're called to, not transformation. To be transfigured is to give ourselves over in yes to all the things that make us more human, not less. You know, our church is always, by God's grace, proclaiming such. Sexuality for us as Roman Catholics is a magnificent thing, a holy thing, a thing filled with joy and wonder, and extremely powerful. So our understanding of it is that you should never separate the physical attraction of sexuality from the spiritual dimension of its potential to shape and form the human person. It's like using the Mona Lisa as a placemat. I mean, yes, it's a piece of canvas. You could use it for that if you wanted, for lunch. But why? There's a spiritual dimension to that art that's evocative and beautiful. Don't use it for that. That's all our church is saying about our sexuality. And so when society says, no, don't worry about that. Have as many partners as you want. Break as many vows as you need. All it's saying is, well, you don't have to do half of the human thing. That's transformation. Transforming someone into less than human. When we're told we don't have to forgive, when we're told that we should be careful of those who have crossed us, and society tells us that people are not trustworthy, tells us to forget the spiritual dimension of our humanness that allows us to get beyond the violence done to us in word or in deed, and to be free of constantly nurturing an anger that will simply make us small. In Transfiguration, we remember that there are two parts to what it is to be a human being. And while our hurt may be real, and our brokenness may be true, like the cross, the spiritual dimension of God's love will always render us victorious. In the end, transfigured humanity is free. And you know, we do experience it. When that person that you fell in love with said yes to "Will you be mine forever?" and there was this elation mixed with nervousness and hope, that was a transfigurating moment. When you work so hard to give your all in that sports team and it works, it wins, or you practice and practice that guitar and suddenly your hands go right to the chord without any thought. You just do it and you go, I can play it. That's transfiguring. When you forgive someone and they burst into tears and say, "Thank you, I'm so sorry," and suddenly you are free. That's transfiguration. That is becoming more and more human. When a parent is able to look at a teenager beyond their anger, that you don't understand me, you don't understand my culture, you won't let me do anything, and see instead the young adult who will grow with a set of principles and a gospel core that will allow them to go into college, and yes, puts themselves on the line so they get that education. That's transfiguration. It happens all the time too. We have to choose, don't we? Which we'll get into. And part of it is being alert. So here, I'll give you a Lenten test. Well, not a test, a Lenten exercise. Just today, Sunday and Monday, today and tomorrow, just put it in the front of your mind to, as you watch television, as you read the paper, as you listen to others, just catch how many subtle strains of transformation there are. When you're in a conversation or you're texting your friends and they start going after somebody, just see how they're trying to turn your opinion against the person they don't like. The next time, you have something well up in you because husband or wife hasn't done the things the way you think they should do, and you want to get kind of calcified and that kind of chilly anger. Here, in there, that thing, give in to that lesser side that doesn't have the freedom to forgive. Just note it and see how many there are. See how many times in a sitcom they laugh at the gospel in subtle ways. And then decide whether you want to be transfigured instead of transformed. You see, our Lord's told us how it happens. He hasn't been the least bit reticent. It's very simple. First, you hang with people who want to be transfigured. You want to win a victory, hang around with those who are winning it or who are running for it. Don't hang around with those who don't care about it. Very simple. Second, if it isn't like the Eucharist, it isn't transfiguring. The Eucharist is broken up and given out so that people can be brought together. It's poured out so that we can be filled up. If my decisions about life, my children, my spouse, my forgiveness, my own sinfulness, and giving it over to God and truly understanding I'm forgiven, is not allowing me to be broken up and handed out so others get filled, if it's not being poured out, if I'm not allowing others to become more important than me, if my ego is not being slain, it ain't transfiguration. Something else. And if it doesn't set me free, it's not transfiguration. They didn't have the nerve to tell anybody, it says. They walked into the very Shekinah of God, and they kept it quiet. I find that hard to believe, personally. But that may be my personality. I would have been telling everybody I saw, you will never believe what happened on that mountain today. But of course, they probably didn't believe me. But then after they looked at the cross, and then a tomb that was empty, floating around the Sea of Galilee, a voice from the shore says, "Have you caught anything yet?" Flashing through my mind would be that moment when on Mount Tabor I realized that I think he's caught me. Because you see, that's transfiguration first and foremost. I won't be caught by my class, by my peers. I won't be caught by my culture, by my job or my boss who tells me I should work on Sunday. I won't be caught by a culture that tells me I can waltz through Lent, through the Walmart, as though it were just like any other day, when everything in heaven is rejoicing at a little Easter. I will be different. I will be caught by Christ, and I, in that catching, will be saved by him enough to be a net for others. May he be praised forever. Amen.